Welcome to the White Knuckle Podcast with your hosts, Jason Science and Dr. Clint McCoy.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the White Knuckle Podcast, episode number 141. We are back. We're back talking about the rut again this week, and I guess the stage of the rut and where it's at. Clint is in surgery this afternoon, so he's unable to be with us. But I was able to lasso Jared Mills, who probably doesn't need a whole lot of introduction. Jared works with Midwest Whitetail. Obviously, you probably know him from that, and as well as 41 North. Jared, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Frustrated at times. You know, we get so excited for the rut and the different stages of it, and then you just want to bang your head against the wall. I've sworn myself off of looking at social media while the rut's...
It's even harder this year, too, just with the weather and everything. I mean, it feels more like mid-November than it does late October. What do
you think? What kind of effect do you think that has on the movement?
I think it has a huge impact on the movement. I don't know that it affects the the rut per se. I think everything's still going to be really good in November and, you know, the usual time frames. But I think just deer have been forced to be on their feet a lot more this month, these last few weeks. Mm-hmm. And it seems like every few days we're getting another cold front. I thought last October was really good. You know, just based on our team, we killed a lot of big deer last October, but you know, we've already surpassed it this year. And it's just been crazy. The weather has been well below average pretty consistently in our area. The quality hunting has been a result of that. So it's been a pretty incredible October so far.
What are you hearing from, like, say in the last 5 days, what are you hearing from your folks that film for you?
It seems like it's just about to bust loose. I mean, the deer movement, like I said, has been really good over the last few weeks in general. But with regards to, you know, I'm starting to get guys see their first real chases of some older deer, you know, 3, 4, 5-year-old type deer starting to chase does. Even I'm seeing it just on the evolution of the trail cam pictures I'm getting. You just start to see deer pushing the envelope more and getting more daytime pictures. And I don't know that's necessarily that they're moving a lot more in the daylight now, but they are covering more area, which results in more daylight pictures. I'm getting, you know, 6, 7-year-old bucks on scrapes at 9 a.m. So I think we're right there, right on the cusp of it, about to break loose in terms of rut activity. And I think that comes at the time of the month, in accordance with the weather we have. I think this next probably 5, 6, 7 days is going to be really, really good leading up to Halloween and the first couple of days of November.
Yeah, it looks the long-term weather forecast, although it's going to warm up a little bit, we're not going to have, 70-degree temperatures, which we all know isn't a whole lot of fun. We're going to have, temperatures in the 40s and in the 50s, probably down where you're at.
Yeah.
It might touch 60, but I don't think that really is going to slow anything down a whole lot. I would agree with you 100%. I'm starting to get a lot more 9, 10, 11, 12 o'clock noon. I just sitting here getting ready to do this podcast. My Reveal app went off, the Tacticam camera that we've been using this year, and sure enough, there was just a 2-year-old hitting a scrape here right at noon. So they're definitely on their feet. Last night I had a super close encounter. Prior to hitting the record button, you and I were talking about how work can interfere with hunting, and I had to do about a 2-hour drive yesterday morning to list a farm. So I got a hunt in the morning, got in the truck, screamed up there, got a signature, several signatures, got pictures, drone, all that stuff, flew back, was able to make it to the tree by 4 o'clock, was doing the interview, And it was one of those deals where I was doing the interview, and my eyes glanced over, and there he was standing. I would say he was probably in the mid 60s to mid 70s.
Man. This was last night?
This was last night in the snow, in the wind, and I don't know what boogered him up. He acted like he smelled me, but he ran up the ridge at me. I watched him go under the fence. I wish it wouldn't have been so brushy, because it'd be really cool video to see how a deer that big gets his entire rack under the fence, but he didn't have any problem doing it. But yeah, that deer was out at 4:00 in the afternoon. But I guess I'm curious to hear what if you were going out tonight, and maybe you are, what's going to be the deciding factor for you in terms of where you're going to sit?
Well, I'm hoping to get out, and it goes back to what we talked about, depends on how much work I get done in the next hour or so. But and I guess first backing up, you saw that deer early yesterday at 4. I saw one of my target bucks at about 4:20 yesterday. He was the first deer we saw. He was coming out of his bed, and it's not what you typically see. We're not quite there yet. We saw him on and off for the rest of the night, but it was just real slow, calculated movements, kind of scent checking little areas. It definitely wasn't cruising, going, like a buck on a mission. It was just very slow, kind of moseying around spot to spot. So it tells you we're not quite there yet, but we're right on the cusp, and it was good to see him up and so early. But to answer your question, I'm still focusing a little bit on those areas where the does are spending a lot of time, feeding areas and transition areas. And this time of year, I really like setting up in callable areas. I think mature bucks especially are very prone to calling right now. I've had a lot of good hunts personally. I've seen a lot of good hunts. This next week and a half can be a great time to grunt a buck in, or snort wheeze a buck in, or even rattle a buck in. And for that reason, I like setting up in areas that allows me to do that, areas that I have good visibility, and areas that I have a good wind advantage, where the mature buck's not going to easily be able to get downwind of me calling at him. So those are some of the biggest things I consider for tree stand selection this time of year, especially the calling part.
Okay. So does a callable, I guess you'd call it a callable spot, would that be in the timber? Primarily just because you're going to use that structure to keep them from...
It can be. I don't necessarily love it in the timber right now, because in our area anyway, there's still quite a bit of leaf cover on the trees.
Yep.
So your visibility isn't as far. I like being on the edge. Like last night, I was set up on the edge of a pond. I had the wind blowing back over the pond. And, if you have an area similar to that, where it's a creek or a ditch or a river, something that just doesn't make it easy for the deer to get downwind of you if you're calling. Those are the type of setups that I really like. And in the timber eventually I like, but right now it's just, you just can't see far enough in my area anyways.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I was absolutely curious. I guess when I thought about last night, the spot that I was in, and I decided to rattle, which I don't generally ever do. Todd was just, he hated rattling so much, so I hadn't done it in the last few years, and this year I've taken my horns along, and last night was the first night that I did it, and I did it only because I'm backed up to, or I'm relatively close to a really steep drop off, and on the southeast side of me, and on the northwest side of me, and the wind's out of the northwest. I've got about 60 yards to a cattle pasture, so they're going to have a hard time getting downwind of me without getting shot. And it worked out. I ended up rattling in probably a 3-year-old 8-pointer, which was cool. But
always cool to see bucks coming into the horn.
Yeah, but again, like you alluded to, it's tough to do it when you've got so much foliage, and that's definitely a problem. So you're wanting to key in on food and a travel corridor, basically. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
Yeah, in our area, there's a lot of freshly picked ag fields. So corn and bean fields that are freshly picked, and that seems to be the preferred destination right now for a lot of the deer, and those especially. But a lot of properties that I have permission to hunt, those ag fields aren't on the property; they're usually on the neighbor. So a lot of times, I'm hunting travel corridors or the routes that deer would take to get to their destination food source. And sometimes I have little, micro clover plots or brassica plots, something like that, planted just as a transition food source that I'll be hunting. So it's just kind of spending time where the does are congregating. They've been pretty consistent over the last few weeks of where they're hanging out, and now the bucks are starting to frequent those areas to check on those does.
Do you think that the deer, because of the cooler temps today, right now it's 34 degrees out, barometric pressure of 30.2, which is great. Do you think that that's going to keep them off of green and on grain, or do you think that if they've been eating on alfalfa for the last few weeks, that they'll continue to eat on alfalfa?
I think it's a little bit dependent on what's in the area, but I don't think if they have some good food sources available, I don't think they'll necessarily move off of them. Let's see, it was about a week ago, less than that. I took one of our guys, Grant, to my farm, and we killed a 6.5-year-old buck on green. I mean, he was just coming out. It was one of those really chilly days, and there's all kinds of deer hitting that. And again, they were hitting it because it was pretty close to bedding, and they eventually transitioned out of it, I'm assuming, to head to the bigger ag fields. But they stayed in there and fed on the greens for long enough to give us a shot.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I've got an area with both. I've got probably a 18-acre alfalfa field with 60 acres of corn. Close to it, and then I'm not a big fan of sitting on the edge of a destination feed field, a big food field like that, because it's like trying to hit the lottery. But I haven't hit that yet. So, but I mean, there is value in getting close to those areas, especially if you can see them and you feel like I think if you're in an area where it's a travel corridor to that destination feed field. And if there is one out there, you can probably call to it. Is that what you see yourself doing most often?
Yeah, and if you have that option, most of my employees don't have the option to sit on a big ag field. Like you said, they can be tough to bow hunt, but also going along with the callability, if you can set up in a spot where you're not going to be competing with a bunch of does coming out right on top of you, you could have a really good hunt with a decoy in that situation where you're just trying to call a buck a couple hundred yards across an open field or something. That decoy would basically make the difference of him coming right into you or not. Mm-hmm. The only situations I don't like using a decoy is, like I said, an area where I know a lot of does are going to be coming out right on top of me. Does get nervous and kind of ruin it. But if I can set up away from where most of the deer are coming out and call that buck to me, having that visual out in that open field would make a big difference.
Sure. Okay. Interesting. What do you see most of your folks having success with? Is there a common tactic or theme that you see over and over again? You mentioned that you guys have gotten a lot of success here in late October.
Yeah. This time of year, to me, it's very weather dependent, and we have that this year, it seems like, based on the forecast. But I really like this week just because I think it's the best time to kill a local buck or a resident buck. They're still cored up in the area they've been the last few weeks. They're not traveling too much to go try to find, the last hot doe or anything. They're usually the bucks that are going to get the first hot doe in their core area. So this is my favorite time to catch a buck that's been in the area. So a deer that a guy's been getting pictures of for the last few weeks, I think this is the best time to catch him before things become random, for a lack of a better term. Once November hits, they could go anywhere based on a hot doe.
Then it's like
right
just
now,
a dart. And
yeah, exactly. But right now, while they're out checking these areas, looking for that first hot doe that's in their area, in my opinion, that's the best time to catch a resident buck. And that's why we see this next week leading up to Halloween. It's such a good week of the season.
I had someone email me today and ask me a question, and I'll see if you answered it or you would answer it the way that I did answer it. And that was they were asking about whether or not to depend on their trail camera for, to take into account what the deer might do because it's the rut. So in other words, I guess to maybe put it into more specific terms, this person had a couple different deer using the same trail an hour after dark, an hour before daylight, pretty consistently through the 22nd, 23rd, just within days, not every day, but pretty consistently on and off for the last, 3-4 weeks. And they asked if I felt like that deer would still be using that same travel corridor. And my answer was, I don't see why it wouldn't, unless something has changed, in that timber where they're bedding, like human intrusion or something like that. I wouldn't see that it would change. What are your thoughts on that?
I would tend to agree. I don't think we're quite at the time of year where their movements are going to change dramatically and they're going to start traveling further distances. I mean, I think there's going to be plenty of does coming into estrus fairly soon in that buck's core area that he's not going to have to go real far to find it. And we're not quite there yet anyway, so he should still be using that. If he was using it, a few days ago, there's no reason it wouldn't have changed. And the thing about trail cameras, I love them as a tool, and I know you guys do as well. But they don't get everything. I mean, most guys aren't running a crazy number of cameras, and for a buck to adjust his trail or his pattern that night or on any given night by 50 yards and completely miss the camera is nothing. And I think we kind of rely on the cameras a little bit too much by thinking, we didn't get pictures of him. He must not have been there tonight.
Right.
He must not have been there this morning. When all reality, he probably was. He just didn't happen to walk those few feet in front of your camera. He's probably in the general area. So I never get too nervous if a few days go by or a couple days go by and I don't get pictures of him. I just usually assume that he's still there. And getting back to the question, I don't see any reason why that particular buck would change based on what he was doing a few days ago.
Okay. All right. Well, hey, thanks for taking the time. If you could give us some bullet points for the week ahead, what it would be that you'd be concentrating on, other than work.
Yeah, exactly. You can take some of the work on my hands so I can spend more time on the tree.
Right, exactly.
No, it's that time of year. You just need to get out if you can. Again, this weather is phenomenal. At least in our area, it's phenomenal for this time of year. You really can't draw it up any better. So I expect there to be some really good hunting starting today. Really, conditions look great today. Starting today all the way through Halloween, looks really good. I think everything's lining up. So my only recommendation would be get in a tree if you have the option, and concentrate on those areas. You've been seeing a lot of does lately. The bucks will be checking those out. They've already started to check them out, but they're probably going to start checking them out a little more during daylight hours, a little more frequently, going to more places. So, get in a tree. This is the time of year that you need to be doing it.
All right. Well, there you have it. I'll take your advice. You just completely changed my whole plan for the night.
Well, I need to let you get off the phone so you can get in the tree.
Oh, yeah. I've got a couple more things to do, and then I'm going to make my way out there. So,
good luck.
Any final thoughts?
That's it. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to do it, and good luck the rest of the year. And again, thanks for taking the time. Have a good rest of your day.
Thanks, Jason. You too.
All right. Bye now. Well, there you have it. Another episode of the White Knuckle Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show and hope you picked up a few nuggets of information along the way that you can use down the road. I want to take just a second and thank our partner in this endeavor, and that is UC Hunting Properties. Without them, this couldn't be possible. You guys all know that I work with UC Hunting Properties, and they're actually nationwide. I would encourage you, for any of your property needs, go to www.uchuntingproperties.com. Thanks for listening. Jason out.